Hi, you're listening to Status Stranded, Intro, Allie by David Halem. I hope you enjoy. Mom, Rain's father, Hartman, my sister Paulina, and my grandfather, all dead. Rain and I held hands on one of the stout-winged aircraft that came in to investigate and assist the situation after Rain's mother lost her mind. No, her mind had always been lost. But today, that her lost mind let loose its destructive rage against us. Rain told the citizens of law officer about past crimes and atrocities that his mother committed. And after some discussion with the other citizens of law, it was decided that Rain's mother would be taken to the containment ward in Darcy, west of the big city that looms north of us. I remember the citizen of law telling another worker that if they were aware of her nature before, Rain's mother would already be in Darcy. The bleeding in my stomach had slowed from a slow stream of blood to only a slow dripping that was easier to manage and control. Rain and I held each other close. We were both shaking in shock of what had just happened not 15 minutes ago. Both of us were covered in my blood. If the passenger compartment we were in were any darker, the blood would glow. I didn't have to insist too hard to convince the medical wards that I didn't need any attention. I said I was fine, and they decided to make use of their resources somewhere else. They did give me a bandage for the wound at the very least, but it all still hurts. I groaned in pain, and Rain held me closer. Both of us felt so frail. We're terrified of something that had just passed. And to think that Rain's mother was invited because we all knew she would come in the first place, not because she enjoys the family, she despises all of us, but to try to do something like what she did today. But she actually did it. Those of us who survived the attack are being taken to the records facility in the big city to give an account of what had happened, so the people who are actually in charge can have a hard-written account of what happened. So that if humanity decides to unanimously leave Earth, we know who to keep under a watchful and even vengeful eye. I blinked and all I could see was Rain's mother about to shoot. I blinked again and all I could see was Rain's father getting shot. I groaned in a different pain. This pain hurt in my head and disregarded the pain in my stomach. I didn't want to talk about what had happened today yet. Rain groaned and growled in mental agony, and he stood up and immediately slammed his fist into the metal wall. "Rain," I said with a quiver to my voice. He dropped to his knees and sobbed. It breaks my heart to see him like this. I carefully got up from the bench in the middle of the room and knelt down in front of Rain. My stomach screamed in pain the entire way down. "Hey," I said softly to him. Tears were streaming down both of our faces. I put my hands on both of his cheeks and leaned my head to meet his forehead. "We're still here," I gently told him. "Still here with each other." I closed my eyes and I could feel his hands touching my cheeks. I could feel his pulse pounding through the veins in his hands. The door to the cockpit opened and one of the pilots walked through. "I'm sorry," the first pilot said. "We don't do this often enough to be knowledgeable of the emotional backlash from something like this," he continued. "The other witnesses, your family members, all said that they weren't ready to testify yet. They wanted some extra time to try to deal with what had happened. Is this the case with you two?" Rain and I looked at each other. We both shook our heads subtly to where we could only see the gesture. "No," I said aloud, we're not ready yet." "Understood," pilot said. "If it brings you peace of mind, Kennedy Sigewald is still going to Darcy for containment." The pilot explained to us. "She is no longer a part of your lives." Rain softly pressed his hands a little tighter on my face and I returned the gesture. "Thank you," Rain said softly. "You have given us your contact information so we can get a hold of you on a day you might be ready to testify," the pilot said. "Until then, we presently have no reason to take you to the city. Where should we drop you two off?" Rain and I have almost gotten to the point where we know what each other is thinking by a look. He nodded and I answered to the pilot. "The Young District." "We'll be about 10 minutes," the pilot said before he went back into the cockpit. The Young District, close enough to home for me. Anywhere there is about half an hour walk to home, but I don't want to go home if home is where the heart is, and mine is so broken, then I don't want to be there. I closed my eyes and I witnessed the terrible moment again, Rain's mother pointing the gun at him, Suddenly I was there again, jumping in front of the shot in a painful, perfect timing that saved Rain's life. The bullet tore a hole in my flesh, sending shockwaves over my skin, splashing into my blood and releasing the golden wine of my blood out to the world, carving a gash through my intestines before stopping at my back, resting in a blazing heat from the gun. My body screamed in pain, but my voice didn't make a sound. Why didn't I scream? Was all the pain so bad all I could do was whimper? Rain's mother was unwavering. She raised the gun to shoot at Rain again, but I was so in shock from the pain and the terrifying reality of the moment that I couldn't do anything to stop this next bullet. How many shots did she made? I don't know. I closed my eyes, waiting for the awful shot that would certainly ruin my life. And then I heard the sound. Click. There was nothing in the gun. Tears poured out of my eyes like a dam that had just busted open. How was I supposed to handle this? All of these emotions being built up to the desired disappointment of the moment. I cried because I was more than thankful that Rain didn't get killed, but the fear in my heart was left with a shortcoming that was just a cutaway and will never have its anticipation fulfilled. The fact that fear can be disappointed is a good thought, but my head hurts from trying to process and understand what had just happened. I opened my eyes and my head was resting in Rain's lap. He was stroking my hair softly. I loved it when he does that. It makes me feel peaceful, even though I'm not peaceful. Rain is gentle, and this is only one example of his gentleness towards me. My body was still shaking from the terrible excitement that had just happened today, and Rain's hands weren't so steady either. The aircraft started to descend, and Rain helped me stand up as the main door of this compartment was open for us to get off. Rain has always told me that there's never been a day in his life where the air didn't smell like smoke. Not wood smoke, but earth smoke, as if the earth itself is burning. I know I haven't been alive for very long, but some part of me hurts as I hear news of the condition of the world. Rain says that he's lost all hope and feelings for the world, and for some reason that feels like an insult to me. Some of the reason for Earth dying has to do with the Earth itself as well as the people on it. There are different stories concerning what first started the death of the Earth, but the most popular story is the one where some deep-sea miners set off an explosion that was too big for that part of the world. It caused the weak point in Earth's crust to fester and weaken more and more. As the wound grew worse and bigger, Earth's surface started to buckle and crumble in different places until there were places on Earth where the mantle was starting to breach. A few such spots were in the middle of the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans, tainting and poisoning the water to where it was almost black or a blood-like color. But that's just the most popular story. As Rain and I left the small aircraft, we were immediately met with political posters that read, "Don't worry, we're talking about you." A nice thought in this day and age, but what are they talking about when talking about us? I've listened to some of the political speeches from different candidates, and they all talk about working together to either save the world or to save humanity. There are multiple ideas of how to save the world. They all sound like good ideas, but we don't know if there's time to make them work. Time is limited. It's been estimated that the world could end anywhere from 3 years to 10 years, or literally tomorrow if the fabled Melzina ship is real. At this point, most of the stories that the alien races tell us about concerning different things out in space has almost been dismissed as religion. If time allows, we could collaborate with different alien races to create balances on the different plates of the Earth to try to balance things out. But that takes time because we don't want to pull all of the pressure on the plates at once. That would break the plates and do worse damage than what's already done. Again, the most popular idea because it's plausible. There have been some groups of people that have already left Earth and fear that the world can end tomorrow for any reason. They left a few decades ago. The ground began to quake as Rain and I walked away from the aircraft, him helping me walk because the shock of the freak incident still left me full of trepidation. Both of us were left like that. The stinging breeze felt frosted against my tear-drenched face, like the cold, haunting experience that we were thrown into. Reluctantly, Rain and I decided to go to my house. The walk to my house took longer than normal because of the gripping pain that I was in. My mind was a buzz of anxious thoughts. What if this happens again? What if Rain's mother isn't really locked up? What if someone else who's just as crazy decides to come after us? What if Rain and I aren't strong enough to get through whatever is next? What if What if? Allie. Rain was face to face with me as we stood in front of my front door. He had his hands on my cheeks. Standing face to face with Rain, I could see golden handprints for my blood on his slightly darker skin than mine. Even when troubled, his warm brown eyes were still a beautiful sight for my tired, sore eyes. Encapsulating. The subtle wind was blowing his short brown hair like short grass in a field. Well, that's the image I know of for a grassy field. His slim face doesn't hold sadness well. Rain spoke again. Allie, He sniffled, but didn't lose his gaze into my eyes. We pulled each other into a hug and sobbed. Our sobbing was out of sync with each other's cries. The ground shaking served little threshold against our weeping. We separated enough so we rested each other's foreheads against each other gently. Both of us were breathing hard and fast. I grabbed his upper arm. Deep breaths. Deep breaths. Our breaths were shaking, and they didn't find a chance to slow down. Any attempt to try and calm down led to nothing. We were slammed into the present as our phones went off, mine toned just before his, a sound that was related to a weather alert or unstable earth warning. I started to get my phone out, but Rain got his out faster than I could. I moved to the wall so I could lean fully against it by myself. Rain stood next to me with his phone screen on display for both of us to see what was going on. The screen read, "Urgent update," in red flashing letters that dominated the screen. There was a popping noise from the sky like if someone popped a balloon in a metal room. I couldn't see what caused the popping noise right away, but in a second, a silver flying saucer flew in and out of my view with smooth steadiness in its flight. Rain saw what I saw. "What one is that?" he asked out loud. I shook my head. "It's not the Soto, right?" "No," Rain said. "The Soto are nowhere close to that." "Oh. And I don't think the Soto have any business to be here, or they haven't heard any reason to be here. I don't know completely what that could mean. There's less than a few dozen alien races that have been having some kind of relations with Earth over the past 60 years. The phone's urgent update flashed white before a malfunded newsreel appeared on the screen, and the man started speaking immediately. "We interrupt your days to inform you of this urgent update," the man began. "Alien ships from the Oddporny alien race have taken positions hovering above the world's largest Capitol buildings. The US, EU, South America, Mediterranean, and Africa, China, and Australia." That news came fast. "We have camera footage of one of the Oddporny standing outside the Mediterranean Capitol building, as if he's waiting to speak with someone," the newsman continued. "The Oddporny race were about 6 feet tall with slim gray bodies, so slim you could put both of your hands around one of their waists and your fingers would touch. They have the lewd tendency of not wearing any clothes. They don't have anything to hide in the first place, but I still don't like the idea. They have balloon-shaped heads that are the size of car tires, with big, full black eyes and a mouth that would go from ear to ear, and is full of flat, rigid brown teeth, and their ears are just little holes on the sides of their heads. They're ugly-looking things." The main shot on the news was on the Mediterranean Capitol building. This Capitol building could be comparable to an exceptionally pearly white Taj Mahal, but it was the front entrance of the Taj Mahal 5 times, one entrance for each of the 5 sides of the building, and in the middle of the roof was a black cube-like structure under a dome of crystal glass. On the newsfeed, they had different shots and angles from the different capitals around the world, with the Oddporny flying silver saucers floating above them, all at different times of the day as well. The biggest flying saucer was on screen at what is effectively known as the world's capital city. That saucer looked to be no smaller than half a mile wide. The Oddporny on screen looked over its tiny shoulder with its big head at the camera. It smirked, revealing a small part of its ugly teeth, and its eyes narrowed, giving off a look of deceit. I felt the horrid creature was staring into my soul. My face contorted into an expression of disgust. There are world leaders, and then there is the highest world leader, and he, Benoni Dean, walked out of the Capitol building on the side the dreaded alien was standing on. Dean is a taller man. He's taller than Rain. Dean has curly black hair that contrasts mildly with his pale skin, and he has a beard that he keeps trimmed down to his skin to where you can only see the shape of the beard. As Dean walked across the front entrance toward the odd-pointing alien, a pedestal rose up from the ground to the left of the alien. Dean stopped at the pedestal and cleared his throat before he spoke. Earth is not even years away from being condemned. All of these proposals to preserve the planet are futile. Our best plan only keeps the world in one piece for another year before total destruction. He glanced over at the alien, then at the camera. Our saviors are here. There was a crowd of sorts that had gathered around the part of the Capitol that Dean was at, and that crowd began to cheer, but were cut off by Dean raising his hands for silence before he continued. I should clarify, not your saviors. The crowd gasped, and I can feel Rain move to react to those words, and I felt my heart beat a little harder. What do you, the lowest of the world, have to contribute to my savior? Dean asked, but he said it with an intentional demeaning tone in his voice. You're worthless, and I will take my rulings elsewhere to a worthy place to rule. Dean openly flaunted this attitude in front of billions, instantly changing his reputation to the point of no return. Dean chuckled amongst the throng of murmuring people. Those posters telling you that we're talking about you, all true. We're talking about how soon we should leave you behind and thrive elsewhere. A few faces from the crowd around him were shouting insults and profanities at Dean. Rain shook his head. Is he so full of shit to do that? My friends and I leave you foul animals with no regrets. And with that, the crowd roared in livid anger as Dean and the alien teleported away, and all of the silver saucers around the world flew away into the sky without a sound. The camera went back to the newscaster, who had a shocked expression on his face. Another newsworker gives the original newscaster another paper to read from. He spoke. We have just received word that the other flying saucers around the world have left with other world leaders who gave similar speeches like that of Benoni Dean. Rain turned off the phone and dropped it to the ground, making it chip in the corner and land with a crack going up the screen. His eyes were intense at what he had just seen. He picked the phone up off the ground and slammed it back down on the pavement, the phone breaking a bigger piece off in a different corner. I backed up to a farther spot on the wall to give him space for a second as he fumed. Rain yelled, and I jumped a fraction from the sound. His throat grinded the strained sound against his deep voice as the pitiful cry echoed into the air. It pained me to see him like this. Rain, I said softly. It was so softly that he shouldn't have been able to hear it because of the yelling, but he stopped yelling and looked over at me. His breaths were shaking, and his hands went straight to the sides of his head. A dragging growl slothfully crawled out of Rain's throat. They left us. He growled the words as he spoke them. To fucking die. Fear swirled around my head like warm piss. He gestured outward. The rest of the world is going to fight for food and local power. He shook his head. What the hell are we going to do in the anarchy? His voice was weaker with those last words. For the first time I looked at the ring on my left hand. It was covered in my blood, so in a morbid way it had not lost its shine and glimmer. Looking at the ring made me feel a strange, peaceful warmth within me. We looked into each other's eyes. This is the most steady I've felt since this morning. I answered him. For now, let's be present. It took a second for the words to sink into Rain's mind, but then he finally breathed a sigh of relief as the sounds of bleeding, screaming anarchy reverberated in the background.
Hi, this is David Halen, and you just finished listening to Intro Allie from my story, Status Stranded. I hope you enjoyed. See you next week.